Bubba Cunningham just revealed Carolina's revenue share plan, and boy, is it going to take a pretty penny. It's time to pony up.
This is Tyler Hansbrough, and you're listening to Locked On Tar Heels.
You are Locked On Tar Heels, your daily podcast on the UNC Tar Heels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, what's up? It's Tuesday, June 24th, 2025. Welcome into the Locked On Tar Heels podcast, the only daily North Carolina show out there. I'm your host, Isaac Schade. You're joining me at the place to get your Tar Heels content every single day. It's all part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Thank you so much for making us your first listener watch. Get your Tuesday going the right way. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Shout out to all the everydayers here with us, all the members of the Locked On Tar Heels Discord, and of course, our Locked On Tar Heels insiders. It's great to see all of you. Coming up on the show today, on Monday, Bubba Cunningham, the AD at Carolina, sent out a letter to Carolina supporters talking about how Carolina will handle the House settlement and everything they do with that. I'll give you my biggest takeaways and highlights from that letter. A little TLDR for you. Ken Pomeroy put out some new program ratings on Monday, and Carolina is elite, but not lately. I'll explain that and unpack it as well. As we get going, a quick mea culpa, a quick edit from yesterday's show when we were discussing the camp scrimmage game from Sunday. I mentioned that Carolina shot 17 of 52 from beyond the arc, 32.7%. I was like, yeah, well, it could be better, but some people shot well individually. Well, it was better. I miss math. I didn't do math good, nor English. It was actually 17 of 42, not 17 of 52. So rather than shooting 32.7% as a team on Sunday, Carolina shot 40.5%. Shout out to Ryan Ramsey 855 on YouTube for catching it and calling me out. I love a good call out because I want to get things right. I love numbers, and I think it's important, though, that we get our numbers right. So thanks, Ryan, for catching that, and just wanted to make sure everyone was aware of it. It's like the retractions and mistakes at the end of PTI or whatever it is. So there you go. Okay. Rev share update from UNC, a letter from Bubba Cunningham that went out Monday morning. Obviously, the House settlement was confirmed recently back on June 6th. And so each school's got to figure out, okay, so what do we do with this? We've been waiting and watching for Carolina to say, here's how we're going to handle it. And now they have. And I just want to start, even before I dive in, by saying, thank you, Bubba Cunningham. Thank you, Athletics Department, because I just think it's good when we can be transparent with the finances, particularly in this day and age of college athletics, where people are being asked to give more and more and more and more, and they want to know where their money's going. And so I think Bubba Cunningham's willingness to do so is going to go a long way in terms of trust with the Carolina fan base. And I had been hopeful for this. We talked, a week or two now ago on the show about how Oklahoma had come out and said how they were going to handle the revenue share side of their House settlement. And I was like, man, I sure hope Carolina does that. And they have now done so. So I just want to read two excerpts to you from Bubba's letter in case you didn't read it, his kind of opening and closing, and then we'll dive in with my takeaways and highlights. So he opens with saying this, quote, "This is a significant evolution that will change our department's financial model while providing greater financial opportunities for student athletes. At Carolina, we have been preparing for these changes for more than a year. We are fully committed to adapting to this new era and continuing to create outstanding championship experiences for our student athletes across our 28-sport broad-based program," end quote. And then he wraps with, quote, "It remains to be seen how this new economic model will impact the future of intercollegiate athletics." That's scary for me. "We do know that as we continue to evolve, Carolina remains committed to providing outstanding experiences and broad-based programming as we share revenue with teams and student athletes who earn it." Interesting. "As we begin this new era, one thing that won't change, our dedication to excellence and winning in and outside of competition." I love that. Good stuff there from Bubba Cunningham to bookend that letter. So here's all the takeaways. Number one, or before we even get to number one, I guess I should say, this is going to start at the turn of the fiscal year, which is July 1. The fiscal year is July 1 to June 30th. So literally next week, this kicks into high gear. So everything I'm saying, it's not some far off distant future. It's literally this time next week. So number one, North Carolina is going to tap out the full $20.5 million in rev share. What you may or may not be aware of is that each school can decide to opt in to the revenue sharing or not, and then decide how much of that they want to do, with 20.5 being the cap, basically the salary cap, more or less, in year one. So North Carolina, Bubba says in this letter, is going to do that full amount, $20.5 million. And as a reminder, this money is not given to the schools. It's not like the NCAA saying, here's $20.5 million, Carolina, and everyone else. No, that would be insanity when you think about the just sheer scale of that. Carolina, that has to come from them. And that's why I say off the top, like, hey, got to pony up, everybody, because it's coming. We'll say more about the where the money comes from in a little bit. So that's number one. Carolina is going to tap out all that money. Number two, this is probably like the biggest takeaway that I've been wondering, because Carolina has these 28 sports. Obviously, the two biggest revenue generating sports are football and men's basketball. So obviously they are going to get money from revenue share out to their student athletes. But what other sports, if any, would get any of that? And Bubba laid that out. So number two, takeaway from this letter from Bubba Cunningham. Revenue share will be distributed to 4 teams: football, men's basketball, women's basketball, and baseball. Those 4 teams. And you might say, why baseball but not softball? Why not soccer? Why not, women's soccer just won a national championship. Women's lacrosse just won a national championship. The problem is that these revenue sports work to help support those other 26 sports, or 24 now, if you want to look at it, with these 4 getting the revenue share. And so they have to look at, okay, who are our biggest earners? Who is helping that the most? And we're going to supplement that so that they can continue to do what they do to help support the rest of the athletics department. And so there you go. Those 4 programs, again, football, both basketballs, and baseball. And again, I had been hopeful that Carolina would give us this info, and now we have it. And now because again, while it might seem like, well, that's inequitable or whatever, but now what the stakes are. And I just think it's better when everything's out in the open, because then you're not like wondering about it, right? And Bubba says football and men's basketball are going to receive, quote, the majority of those funds, end quote, but doesn't provide any specific percentages to that. Now, we can start to make speculations. We know how much, for example, Bill Belichick asked for in his contract of that rev share to go to football. And so we can start to make some assumptions, but just knowing that those 2 sports are going to get the most. Bubba also says, though, that the division of funds is going to be evaluated on an annual basis. It's not just like, hey, this is set in stone until Jesus comes back. They're going to continue to look at that every year. And the reason I said $20.5 million this year is because there's going to be a 4% increase in revenue share every year. So there's that to keep in mind. Number 3 in the highlights and takeaways from this. I think the rev share being distributed to those 4 teams is probably the biggest picture thing, or the biggest takeaway. But the next one is that the scholarship allotment for Carolina as an athletics department is going to go up by nearly 200 scholarships, from 338 currently to 532. So 6 scholarships shy of 200 more. Part of that is because, there are now there are not scholarship restrictions anymore, and the roster limits are what are changing. And so that scholarship allotment is going to go up. That's part of the joy of dealing with all this money, is while it's difficult, you get all this now. And then the biggest other thing I want to take away from this, and then we'll take a break and some other takeaways, is while it's not explicitly stated, it's implied through the language multiple times. And this is part of why I love Carolina so hard. Carolina is going to continue to field 28 varsity sports. Man, that is DNA to this university. And I love that Bubba Cunningham vehemently desires to hold on to that part of the special sauce of Carolina. Isaac, what is that language, right? Well, there's a statement in the letter where he says the settlement removes scholarship limits for all sports, as we just said. So we will increase our scholarship allotment by nearly 200 across our 28 sport program, right? It's just kind of a throwaway line, but Bubba is reminding you there that there will still be 28 sports. I read it in those first two statements where he talks about the broad-based program, meaning 28 sports. And so like Carolina's continued commitment to not give up on this. Like I've been scared, like, gosh, there's so many successful programs at the University of North Carolina. Just don't give up on them. And they haven't. You think back to COVID, so many universities just had to, right? Like it was the choice they had to make, had to cut programs. And they did, but Carolina did not. They refused. And in fact, I mean, gosh, they were able to find the financial means to do so. So that's a big part of it. And secondly, in the lead up to this, knowing about the new roster limit or the new roster limits and scholarship changes, a lot of schools started to cut in anticipation of that coming. Not Carolina. Carolina kept all 28 sports. And from what Bubba Cunningham is saying, it appears that they will continue to do so. And that makes me proud to be somebody that covers this school who is so committed to that broad-based program. Thank you, Bubba Cunningham. Thank you, department. Keep it up. Now, that's a little bit kind of more on the revenue share side of the House settlement. What did Bubba Cunningham have to say about the NIL side of this? And boy, that's a lot of money that's got to be raised. Where is that all coming from? We'll get to all of that coming up in just a second. Right after I tell you about FanDuel, summer sports are in full swing. And whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game more exciting. You're already following the action anyway, so why not make it a little bit more thrilling? That's what FanDuel can help you do. With FanDuel, you can get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburned at the beach, right? Keep it going. You can use FanDuel to track your favorite matchups, and the app keeps it fresh with new daily promotions and fun ways to get in on the action. It's easy to use, it's fast to pay out, and makes even regular season games feel like must-watch events. So whether you're in placing the same game parlay or you're watching a bet right into the ninth inning, FanDuel makes it feel like you're always part of the action. How about some early World Series odds? Dodgers lead the way right now at plus 220. Sure. Yankees second at plus 600, and the big surprise to me, the Tigers at plus 850. Crazy stuff there. Way to go, Detroit. You new to FanDuel? New customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if that first bet wins. So go ahead, open up the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Let's continue to talk about how Carolina is going to handle, I'll call it the fallout of the House settlement. That makes it sound negative, but just like what they have to do in response to, maybe is a better way to say it. So we just looked a little bit at the revenue share side of it as Bubba Cunningham laid that out in a letter on Monday, but he also went on to talk about some of the other financial factors in it. And we'll start with NIL is where we head next, because I think what's easy to forget is that even though the rev share kicks in, there is still third-party NIL opportunities, and that's number 5. As known, third-party NIL opportunities are going to continue. So keep this separate from rev share in your mind. They are two separate revenue share streams that student athletes will have available to them. At least I should say specify for those 4 programs. For the other 4 programs that aren't getting, or for the other 24 programs, that aren't getting revenue share, they can still benefit from third-party NIL opportunities. Now, keep in mind, and I've talked about this before, but just want to remind you, any NIL deals 600 or more have to be reviewed and have to be approved by NIL Go, which is the clearinghouse for the brand new College Sports Commission. So that's just the thing. I've been joking like, boy, I can't wait to see all these $599 NIL deals flying off the shelves, right? And as part of that, I got a question from Shoe Dog on the Locked On Tar Heels Discord. If you want to join us, that link's in the show notes. Absolutely free to be a part of. Shoe Dog, I guess I shouldn't assume is a he, says, so there is no more Old Well management. As you remember, Old Well management is now the one-stop shop for all of Carolina's NIL efforts. There used to be separate for football, separate for basketball. That's all now under one roof. And that will continue to be the avenue through which Carolina tries to work at having their NIL opportunities. So no, Old Well is not going away. And in fact, Bubba talks in the letter, if you do want to go read it, about other, all the various kind of ways and means that Carolina goes about those NIL opportunities. So great question from Shoe Dog, but no, Old Well management is alive and well. Sixth kind of takeaway from Bubba's letter for me. Some more on the $2.7 billion in back pay. This is another tentacle of the House settlement. So there's rev share, there's NIL, there's also the $2.7 billion in back pay. This is money for the student athletes who, quote, to quote Bubba, participated from 2016 through 2024, but were not allowed to participate in NIL activities because of NCAA rules, end quote. So one of the questions I've had a lot is, okay, Isaac, that's great, but how are those people, those men and women getting paid? Where is that money coming from? Great question. Glad you asked. That is going to be funded by the NCAA withholding some revenue distribution to schools over the course of the next decade. So the House settlement is a 10-year agreement. And over the course of that, the NCAA is going to withhold revenue distribution every year. So Bubba says in his letter that that's going to come at an impact of about $2 million to North Carolina annually. So that's more money that Carolina has to offset. So not just the 20.5 defrayed to or given out, distributed. That's what I was looking for, to the student athletes, but another $2 million that they will not receive yet from revenue share because the NCAA is withholding it to be able to back pay all those student athletes. So keep that in mind. Number 7. Okay, Isaac, that's a whole crud ton of money that Carolina is going to have to come up with. Where on earth is it coming from? Great question. Number 7 on the highlights and takeaways is budget increases and new revenue opportunities. Bubba talks about in his letter that in order to make all this happen, he expects the athletics budget to increase by about $30 million. Yes, 30 million million in the next academic year. The budget was already $150 million for the athletics department. And so that means it's going to go up to $180 million. That's like 1/5 of what it already was added to it. That's crazy. And Bubba says that increase reflects both the addition of rev share and the new football investment, right? Remember with bringing in Coach Belichick and all the guarantees that the athletics department made about investments in personnel, both student athletes and coaches, Coach Belichick, the investment in Coach Belichick and everything else, that's part of this as well. So it's those two things is where it's all coming from. So how on earth does Carolina find more money? That's the next question. Well, to help, the Tar Heels have hired a new chief revenue officer, CRO. And that person's role will be to, quote, investigate and initiate new revenue opportunities, end quote. So basically somebody to come in and just say, all right, we've just added $30 million to our annual budget. I'm just laughing at the incredulity of all of that. Where is it coming from? So Bubba lists off a whole truckload of possibilities in his letter. Naming rights, field sponsorships, and you're like, what do you mean by both of those? Keep in mind, people will name the court, the field, and the actual building. So like Roy Williams Court at the Dean E. Smith Center. You've got whatever the name is of the baseball field at Boshamer Stadium. I can't think of what it is right now, but they will name everything they can, the locker room, the weight room, right, to be able to raise that money. So naming rights, field sponsorships, jersey patches. I mean, that's kind of a no-brainer in this day and age to do that. Talks about expanding football's bell tower block party to draw more fans. Bubba says options to further optimize the relationship with corporate sponsorship with Learfield, what that might look like and how they could do that. And then the other thing he talks about is more aggressive ticket sales initiatives, right? You remember, who was it? Tennessee last year famously said they were going to add a price hike on tickets because of helping to offset all of this. And so you might see that, or just other ways to go about it with ticket sales. And then additionally, Bubba says money will also come from ACC success initiatives. Remember, the model now from the ACC for RevShare is not just equal across the board. There are performance-based bonuses that you can get. And so Carolina being awesome at men's basketball and now raising the game in football is really important. And then he also says additional funding allocated by the state of North Carolina from gambling revenues may also assist our efforts in the coming year. So keep that in mind. And then one other final note on this is that finding more money doesn't just mean raising more money. Let me tell you a Schade family story. My daughter, Poppy, just finished kindergarten. And one of the things my wife, Maggie, and I joked about this past year is that we were basically getting a raise because she had been in preschool. We were paying for preschool. We were paying for after school care for somebody coming to our house to watch her after school or to pick her up and bring her to our house while we were both working all day, right? But now she goes to public school, so we don't have to pay for that. And then now we are not paying for after school care. So we joked that we basically got a raise because that money came off our books. The reason I bring that up is to say sometimes instead of raising more money, one other way to find more money is to cut money. So to that point, Bubba says, quote, "We will continue to evaluate our department's budget and spending for cost-cutting opportunities," end quote. So is there slush out there? Is there excess we can get rid of? Hear me say, I do not believe Carolina will cut any teams. Bubba talks about that too regularly and too often. I interpret that to say other cost-cutting methods that do not include cutting teams. That's my belief anyway. And then a couple suggestions on how to help. He says contribute to the Rams Club, investigate third-party NIL opportunities. How can you do that? Thirdly, how to help. And this one you might not think of as a real thing, but it is. He says, follow our student athletes and our teams digitally. Why? Because beyond learning about the teams and individuals, likes and follows truly do matter. I've learned so much about that through podcasting of how the visibility that you get when you have more followers, when you get more likes, is an opportunity for corporate brands to say, oh, you're getting all of these eyeballs and ears on your thing. I want to get in on that. I want to pay you to get in on that. And so the more people that follow the student athletes and the teams accounts, the more people that like it and make those visible, the more likely they are to get more NIL opportunities. So that's why that matters. And then fourthly, Bubba says, show up, buy tickets, and come to the games. Yes, for the moral support, the fan support, but also because those ticket things matter. And for my money's worth, funny, for my money's worth, post-COVID, there's been, I guess it's coming back some now, but just across the board, whether it's going to the movies or sporting activities, as TVs and things like that get better and other non-in-person experiences are growing in capability and popularity, not as many people go, I think, and ticket prices have certainly increased. But Bubba's saying when you can and how you can, please do show up for us. That helps. So there you go. A whole bunch of stuff on the house settlement. I've been reading about it like crazy. I've been studying it like crazy because I want to be able to share as much information as I can. If you do have other questions, please don't hesitate to reach out and ask, whether through social media, whether in the Discord. If you're Locked on Tar Heels Insider, obviously you can do it there, however it is. Now, let's switch gears a little bit. On Monday, Ken Pomeroy, you're familiar with Ken Pomeroy and his great college basketball data, came out with a new thing called program ratings, an updated version of his program ratings. Where does Carolina fall in it? Really good all time, but lately, not as much. We'll unpack that in just a second. Ken Pomeroy is one of the most popular referenced data analytics sites for college basketball in this day and age. You hear me talk about it a lot of the time. If you follow more college basketball outside of me or outside of the Tar Heels, you hear people talk about it all the time because it's great. And one of the things he does, I actually wasn't even hadn't even found this part of his website, but there's a section he has called program ratings. And basically, it's a look at what programs, what teams have been the best overall throughout the course of the Ken Pom database, which dates back to the 96-97 season. That through the present is 29 seasons worth of data. So he's got a ton of data. And with Ken Pom's program ratings, he's just the reason I'm bringing it up, the reason it's in the news right now, is he has just updated it with a new and improved formula for how he looks at the program ratings. I don't want to get into the nitty gritty of that today because that doesn't matter. What I do want to look at is the Carolina takeaways from it, because what you're seeing is over the course of these past, let's just call it round up to 3 decades, it will be after this upcoming season, what schools have been the best schools the most consistently across the Ken Pom era. And so here's what I learned from study, because you know I love a good spreadsheet, baby. Oh, I love a good spreadsheet. So I've been nerding out on that all Monday and want to share it with you today. But what I've learned is that overall, Carolina has been elite, and I mean elite. But you also notice a recent downward trend in the Tar Heels. Carolina has to turn that around, right? Like I think we all feel it and we all notice it, but when you see it in bold relief, in statistical proof in front of you, that's where it really kind of hits you like, okay, we're not just feeling this. This is a real thing. Here's what I mean. Carolina in Ken Pom's program ratings is 4th overall over the course of the past 3 decades. Again, back to the 96-97 season, Dean Smith's last year. Carolina is behind only Duke, Kentucky, and Kansas in those ratings. But I mean, that's like probably the 4 bluest blue bloods there are those top 4. They prove it again and again and again. But in the last 6 seasons, Carolina has not been at the level that they consistently and typically enjoy, the Carolina standard. There was the 2-year Matt Doherty clip back in the early 2000s, 1 or 2 blips in the Roy Williams era, not much. And so what causes me to like, Carolina has finished outside the top 30 at Ken Pom 2 of the last 3 seasons. 23 when they didn't make the tournament, and this past year, 25 when they barely did. They have finished outside the top 30 at Ken Pom in 4 of the past 6 seasons. To put it in perspective and for frame of reference, in the first 23 Ken Pom seasons, Carolina finished outside the top 30 a combined 4 in all of that time. In the first 23 seasons, they finished outside the top 30 in 4 of the last 6. That is a downward trend. Now, for some other perspective, it's totally Carolina first world problems because, yes, 2020 was bad of the previous 6 years. Carolina finished 84th at Ken Pom. But the other 5 since then, they finished 34th, 16th, 43rd, 9th, and 31st. Most programs would kill for that, but not Carolina. That's not Carolina's standard. And so that's my biggest takeaway from looking at this Ken Pom data is Carolina has to turn some things around here. How can they? And all I truly believe all that financial conversation we just had is a massive part of this. This is why the SEC is so good right now. They financially invested in men's college basketball. Carolina has to be able to do that and has to be able to get beyond the ACC's limitations. That's part of the issue as well. And so how does Carolina do that in this day and age? How do they create the consistency of the Roy Williams era? Roy Williams was on some Ken Pom heaters, man. His first 6 seasons, and yes, I'm including his very first season, 03-04, right out of the Matt Doherty era. Because even in that first year, he had Carolina 11th in the final Ken Pom rankings. Those first 6 seasons, 11th, 1st, 10th, 1st, 3rd, and 1st. What? Yes. 5 straight seasons of a top 10 finish, 6 straight of a top 11 finish, including his first year. And then 2015 to 2019, same kind of hot heater, 10th, 2nd, 3rd, 8th, 7th. But since that finished with the 18-19 season, since then, Carolina has been top 10 just once in the past 6 seasons. Something's got to give. And that's got to start this year. because I truly believe with the financial changes, with having a GM, with Coach Davis feeling like he's on the hot seat, I'm like, this truly is a make it or break it year. Now, just a couple other quick points on this data. In these 29 seasons of the Ken Pom era, just 12 schools have ever finished number one. Carolina is one of those 12. Duke has done it the most, finishing first 7 times. That's crazy. Then Kentucky 4, and then Carolina and Gonzaga 3 times each. So tied for the third most. Just 7 schools have finished top 10 at Ken Pom double-digit times. Carolina is in that group. They have the 4th most with 15 top 10 finishes at Ken Pom. Just 8 schools have finished top 25 at Ken Pom at least 20 times. Hear me say that. Finished top 25 at Ken Pom at least 20 times out of the 29 Ken Pom years. Carolina is 5th in that, finishing top 25 exactly 20 times. That's crazy. And then how about this one? Only 10 schools in the entire nation, 10 of them, have finished top 50 at Ken Pom at least 25 of the 29 seasons. Carolina has done so exactly 25 times. The 4 times they've missed are 2002, when they finished 137th. In fact, that's the only time they finished outside the top 100 at Ken Pom. The very next year, 2003, they were 54th, making it again all the more impressive that Roy finished 11th in his first year right after that. 2010, right after everyone left, they were 61st. Remember, that was the year they went to the NIT and lost in the championship game. And then 2020, they finished 84th. Those are the only 4 seasons that Carolina has not been top 50 at Ken Pom. Crazy stuff. But again, a lot of the downturn has been the last couple of years. How can Carolina just keep taking steps back toward being Carolina? I think this data shows us some of that reality. And so that's part of why I wanted to share it with you, to say, past 3 decades, Carolina continues to be elite. But when you hone in on the past half decade, just north of past half decade, it doesn't look as pretty. Got work to do. And I think Carolina's done so. Very excited for this year. But you got to go out and do it on the court. All right, gang, that's it for today's show. Thanks so much for being with us. If you've not subscribed to Locked On Tar Heels, do it right now so you don't miss a second. If you've not joined Locked On Tar Heels Discord, again, that link is in the show notes. A group of over 500 people who would love for you to join them. We're talking Carolina stuff, life, whatever, all the time. It's a blast. If you've not joined the Locked On Tar Heels Insiders program, man, there's a spot for you in there. Would love to have you. That link is also in the show notes. A great way to help support the show and allow us to continue doing all the fun stuff that we're doing. You guys, it's always a great day to be a Tar Heel. We'll be back again tomorrow on the show, but until then, peace.